A drone strike hit Egypt's Damietta port on July the 29th, setting fire to the US-owned Energos Winter floating storage and regasification unit and the nearby GasLog Salem. Security sources examining the wreckage say at least 2 drones were involved, penetrating several layers of Egypt's air defenses in the process. No one was injured. The port eventually stayed open, with Egypt's Ministry of Transport confirming normal vessel traffic and cargo handling across all terminals. By the way, no group has yet claimed responsibility. Those are the facts. What they mean is the more interesting question, and it has several possible answers. My name is Areski Daoud. I am a geopolitical analyst and editor of the North Africa Journal. So the most straightforward reading is that this was a demonstration. Damietta, as you know, sits well outside the main battlefields of the current Middle East war, and a multi-drone strike that got past layers and layers and layers of air defenses shows planning, not opportunism. Hitting a gas handling asset at a major port rather than a purely symbolic target tells everyone watching that distance from the fighting in the Gulf no longer guarantees safety. Ports, pipelines, as well as storage terminals across the region now have to price in the possibility that they are reachable. The Energos Winter is not a minor asset. It carries a regasification capacity of about 450 million cubic feet per day. That's roughly 7% of Egypt's daily gas consumption and 16% of its total LNG receiving and regasification capacity. Taking that offline, even temporarily, by the way, has real consequences for Egypt's gas balance during peak summer demand. A strike calibrated to hit something that matters rather than something merely visible or symbolic points towards a message intended for state and market audiences alike. The more strategically interesting explanation involves Saudi Arabia. Riyadh has spent the past year pushing harder on pipeline and routing options that move crude away from the Strait of Hormuz towards the Red Sea and the Mediterranean pathways, several of which run through or depend on Egyptian infrastructure. If Damietta is read through that lens, the strike looks less like an attack on Egypt and more like an attack on the exit ramps that Gulf producers are building to avoid the most dangerous choke points. That framing would explain why Egypt, a country that has worked very hard to stay outside of the direct line of fire in this current war, became a target at all. It also fits a broader pattern already visible in the Red Sea, where Houthi forces have moved to blockade Saudi ports and strike tankers and storage facilities. Damietta would be a Mediterranean extension of that same logic. If the obvious routes are dangerous, make the alternatives dangerous as well. The Houthis themselves have pushed back on that reading. A source in the group's foreign affairs office has denied any role in the Damietta strike and said its attacks are directed only at Saudi Arabia. If that denial is taken at face value, the corridor pressure campaign either has a second author beyond the Houthis, or the Damietta strike sits outside the group's declared scope entirely, which points more towards Iran or Iran-aligned actors operating past the boundaries the Houthis have set for themselves. The third explanation is more narrowly military. An attack built to defeat multiple layers of air defense is also, by definition, a probe of what those defenses can and cannot stop. Egypt is now running a parallel investigation into exactly that question, whether or not the strike was aimed primarily at signaling anything to Gulf producers. It clearly doubles as free intelligence for whomever launched it, and a warning to Cairo that its own airspace is not as sealed as it might have assumed. No party so far has claimed the attack, and the one group with an obvious motive and a track record of maritime strikes in the region, the Houthis, has denied involvement. The denial narrows the field without closing it, and nothing public ties the strike definitely to Iran, a different proxy force or any other actor. The absence of fingerprint does not make the strike less significant. It's consistent with the style of attacks seen elsewhere in this conflict, where the value lies in the uncertainty itself. A claimed attack invites a direct response. An unclaimed one spreads doubt across every actor with the possible motive, while still delivering the underlying message that is energy infrastructure anywhere in the region is now in play. Bottom line, Egypt says a drone strike involving multiple drones that got past its air defenses caused the Damietta fire. No one was hurt. The port never stopped operating, and the investigation into responsibility continues. So as of now, this is a contained incident with no casualties and no lasting damage to Egypt's gas supply. Right against the wider war, it looks like a calculated attempt to show that the routes Gulf producers are building to avoid the region's worst choke points are not necessarily immune either, and that Egypt's neutrality does not extend to the infrastructure sitting on its coastline.